What if the one moment you stopped thinking about yourself ended up changing your entire life? Marcus had been trying to land a corporate job for 2 years straight. 2 years of rejections, of "we'll call you back," of updating his resume at 2 a.m. and staring at the ceiling wondering if he was even cut out for any of this. And the one day he finally gets called in for the biggest interview of his life, he throws it all away for a complete stranger. Or at least, that's what everyone thought he did. Because what nobody knew, not Marcus, not the people watching, not even the girl he helped, was that this single act of kindness was about to flip his entire world upside down in the most unexpected way possible. Stay with me, because this story goes places you will not see coming. Let's set the scene. It's a Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, the kind of morning where the wind hits you in the face the second you step outside and reminds you that life is not playing around. Marcus, 26 years old, is dressed in the only good suit he owns. He ironed it the night before, twice. He even polished his shoes, something he hadn't done since his cousin's wedding 3 years ago. He had an interview at Harlow and Reed, one of the biggest marketing firms in the city. Not just any interview either. This was a final round interview, the kind where they already like you and just want to see you in person before they shake your hand and hand you a salary that actually pays rent without making you cry a little inside. Marcus had been grinding for this moment. He worked 2 part-time jobs while teaching himself marketing strategy online. He had a notebook full of campaign ideas that he'd sketched out at night. He was ready. He was so ready. His interview was at 10 a.m. He left his apartment at 8:30 because he wanted to get there early, walk around the block a few times, calm his nerves, maybe grab a coffee, and look like a guy who has his life together. He gets on the subway. Everything is fine. He's listening to music, running through answers in his head, completely locked in. And then the subway doors open at the Michigan Avenue stop. And that's when he sees her. A young woman, maybe 24, 25, is standing on the platform with 3 overstuffed bags. One of them has clearly broken at the strap. Papers are spilling out. Her laptop bag is sliding off her shoulder. She's juggling her phone, trying to read something. And she looks absolutely overwhelmed. Like she's 2 seconds away from either crying or screaming. Maybe both. People are walking right past her. Not one person stops. The platform is packed, and everyone is in their own world, doing their own thing, which, honestly, is just how city life goes sometimes. Marcus watches her from inside the train. The doors start beeping. They're about to close. He has exactly 1 second to make a decision. And Marcus, this guy who has been focused on nothing but this interview for the past 6 months, grabs his bag, jumps off the train, and goes to help her. The doors close behind him. The train leaves. He doesn't even think about it. He just does it. He walks over, catches the bag before more papers fall out, and says, "Hey, let me help you with that." She looks up at him, clearly surprised that a stranger in a suit is crouching down helping her gather her stuff off the floor of a subway platform. Her name is Leah. She thanks him, a little flustered, and Marcus helps her reorganize her bags, makes sure the broken strap is at least manageable, and carries one of the bags up the stairs for her because the elevator is out of service. Classic Chicago. They talk for maybe 5 minutes. She asks where he's headed. He tells her about the interview. She smiles and says, "Good luck. You're going to do great." He smiles back and says, "I hope so." They go their separate ways. And Marcus, now running about 18 minutes behind, starts power walking toward Harlow and Reed. He gets there at 10:09, 9 minutes late. He apologizes at the front desk. He explains there was an issue on the subway. He sits down and waits. His heart is pounding. His palms are sweaty. He's going over everything in his head thinking, maybe they'll still see him. Maybe it won't matter that much. Maybe. The receptionist comes over and says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. The panel has already moved on. They won't be able to fit you in today. We'll be in touch." That's it. We'll be in touch. Those 4 words that every job seeker knows means it's over. Marcus sits there for a moment. Just sits there in that waiting room chair, in his twice-ironed suit, with his polished shoes, and his notebook full of campaign ideas. He nods, thanks them, and walks out. He rides the subway home in silence. When he gets back to his apartment, he sits on his couch and doesn't move for a while. He calls his mom. She answers on the second ring the way moms always do when they somehow know something's wrong. He tells her what happened. There's a pause on the line, and then she says, Marcus, you did the right thing. He's not sure he believes her. His roommate, Dion, gets home later that evening and Marcus tells him the whole story. Dion is quiet for a second and then goes, "Bro, you got off the train for a stranger. You missed the biggest interview of your life for someone you don't even know." And Marcus just says, "She needed help, man." Dion shakes his head, but not in an angry way. More like the way you shake your head at someone who is either the most selfless person you know or the least practical. Maybe both. The next few days are rough. Marcus goes back to refreshing job boards. He updates his resume again. He tries not to think about how close he was. He'd made it to the final round. That doesn't happen by accident. That takes skill. And he knew it, which made the whole thing sting even more. By Friday, he'd pretty much accepted that the opportunity was gone and he needed to move forward. And then on Saturday morning, he gets a phone call from a number he doesn't recognize. He almost doesn't pick up because he figures it's spam. But something makes him answer. The voice on the other end is calm, warm, and professional. The woman says, "Hi, am I speaking with Marcus Carter?" He says yes. She says, "My name is Sandra Reed. I'm the CEO of Harlow and Reed." Marcus almost drops his phone. She continues. She says that her daughter, Leah, came home on Tuesday and told her about a young man in a suit who jumped off a subway train to help her when she was struggling with her bags on a platform. She said Leah described the whole interaction, the patience, the kindness, the way he didn't make it weird or expect anything in return. Just helped and went on his way. And then Leah mentioned that this young man had told her he was on his way to a job interview. Sandra says she didn't think too much of it at first. But then on Wednesday, she's reviewing the final round candidate notes for an open position at her firm. And she sees the name, Marcus Carter, final round candidate. No show, marked as disqualified. And she stops. She calls her daughter again, describes the position, describes the timing. And Leah says, "Mom, that's definitely him. He was heading to an interview downtown at 10 a.m. on Tuesday." Sandra sits with that for a moment. A man who was minutes away from potentially landing a life-changing job saw her daughter struggling and chose to help without knowing who she was, without any expectation, without hesitating, and missed his shot because of it. She tells Marcus on the phone that she would like to invite him back in, not for a regular interview, for a direct conversation with her. Marcus shows up on Monday. No nerves this time. Or well, okay, a lot of nerves. But a different kind. Not the desperate, "please pick me" kind of nerves. More like the "this is real" kind of nerves. He walks into Sandra Reed's office. And sitting off to the side is Leah. She gives him a small wave and a smile. Marcus actually laughs a little because the whole situation is just so unbelievable. Sandra looks at him for a moment and then says, "Tell me about yourself. Not your resume. You." And Marcus talks. He talks about growing up, about his mom working double shifts, about teaching himself marketing because he couldn't afford a fancy degree program, about the notebook. He actually pulls the notebook out and shows her his campaign concepts. Real ones. Ideas he'd built from scratch just because he loved the work. Sandra listens to everything. At the end, she says, "You know, I've interviewed a lot of people in this building. Smart people, qualified people, people with credentials I don't even fully understand. But I'll tell you something. Character is the one thing you can't fake in a 2-minute interaction on a subway platform. And my daughter is a pretty good judge of people." She offers him the position on the spot, not the entry-level role he had originally applied for. A senior creative associate position. Better title, better pay, a seat at the table where real decisions get made. Marcus is quiet for a second, and then he says, "Why?" Sandra smiles and says, "Because the kind of person who helps someone for no reason, when everything is on the line for them personally, is the kind of person I want working with my team." Marcus starts 2 weeks later. He calls his mom that night. She doesn't say, "I told you so." She doesn't need to. He can hear her smiling through the phone. Now here's the part of this story that hits different when you really sit with it. Marcus didn't help Leah because he thought something good would come from it. He didn't do it as some calculated move. He did it because it was the right thing to do in that moment. And that was enough reason for him. That's it. No hidden motive. No angle. He just saw someone struggling and he helped. And the universe, or fate, or God, or whatever you want to call it, has this funny way of keeping receipts on moments like that. There's actually research that backs this up in an interesting way. Studies on prosocial behavior, that's just a fancy term for doing things that benefit others, consistently show that people who act with genuine kindness, especially with no expectation of reward, build stronger social trust and are perceived as more competent and more trustworthy in professional environments. It's not just feel-good stuff. It's documented. But what this story really comes down to isn't a study or a stat. It's something simpler than that. Most people, in that moment on the train, would have stayed in their seat, and nobody would have blamed them. You have an important interview. You're already nervous. You're in your own head. The logical thing is to stay on that train. But Marcus didn't do the logical thing. He did the human thing. And there's a version of this story where it doesn't work out, where Leah isn't the CEO's daughter, where nobody makes the connection, and Marcus just has a really rough Tuesday and eventually finds another opportunity somewhere down the line. That version exists too. Life doesn't always wrap things up neatly. But the part that would have stayed the same in both versions is who Marcus is, because he would have made the same choice either way. He wasn't being kind because it might pay off. He was being kind because that's who he is. That's the version of yourself that's worth building, not the one that only shows up when the cameras are rolling or when someone important might be watching. The one that shows up when no one is watching, when there's nothing to gain, when you're actually giving something up. Because you genuinely never know who's watching. You never know whose daughter you're helping. You never know how one Tuesday morning moment becomes the moment that changes the whole story. Marcus lost a job interview and got something better in return. Not just a better job, but proof of something he already knew about himself. That he was the kind of man who would jump off the train. Not everyone is. But the ones who are, the world tends to notice eventually.